So I did a figure drawing practice session. Here are some of the sketches. And if I had changed the paper that I used, the way that I sharpened the pencil, the angle of the drawing surface, what I placed underneath the paper I was drawing on, I wouldn't have been able to draw like this. Everything needs to be right to get these results. At least that's what I've found. Then I need to practice certain techniques with the pencil and think about specific things as I make my marks. And so what I'm going to do today is talk you through the exact setup that I use to get these kind of marks, and also the thought process as I'm doing the drawing in terms of how I'm going to make each mark. So let's get into it. Firstly, the paper that I'm using is smooth newsprint. You can also use marker paper, which apparently has a similarly smooth surface, but I haven't found many types of paper that can match the smooth newsprint. And when I try to use like other types of art paper, I can't quite get this type of mark. It's this, and if it's rough newsprint, it doesn't work either. So a big factor is the paper. So that's the paper and then the pencil. Now, I like to use a Pitt Pastel black pencil or a General's charcoal pencil. You can also use a Conte Pierre Noire pencil. I find that some pencils snap very easily as you're sharpening them, and the Pitt Pastel is really good for not snapping but still creating really nice marks. And the General's is not too bad either, although recently they've been snapping a lot, which is incredibly frustrating. And then the Conte Pierre Noire, I snap all day. So I focus on these. Now, just as important, you can get lots of different types of soft charcoal or pastel pencil and they're gonna work. It doesn't have to be these two brands. It could be all kinds of different ones. But what is important is how they're sharpened, right? If I use a normal pencil sharpener, it's gonna create a point like this, where it's just, if you think about it as a sort of triangle shape going up to the point, it's just a straight lines on each side. I don't really want it to just be straight lines on each side. I want it to have a very slight curvature to it, just tapering in as it goes to the point. And I want more of the lead exposed, right, than a standard pencil sharpener. So the way that I'm gonna sharpen the pencil is I'm gonna get a razor blade and I'm gonna strip the wood back. I'm shaving off the wood. I want it to be like I'm scraping off as little wood as I can on each pass. And that's slower because I have to do loads and loads of rounds of cutting because I'm just cutting off a little bit each time. But if I get impatient and I try to cut a lot of wood off, like really dig it in and get straight to the lead as quickly as possible, it's going to end in disaster. I want to creep up on lead as I'm gently shaving off the wood, right? And the way that I do it is I push with my thumb on the razor blade against the wood and I turn every time. So every time that I cut, I then turn it maybe 3 millimeters. I rotate the pencil and then I'll cut again and rotate again. So I'm shaving off one layer all the way around the pencil, and then I'm shaving off another layer all the way around the pencil. And then eventually, but once you've started to do this a few times, you'll build up that muscle memory and it will become quite quick. And before you know it, you'll start to get to the lead. I just want to expose a good chunk of lead, maybe about 2 centimeters. It's up to you. Different people want a different amount that they expose on the side of the lead. It kind of depends how wide of a mark you want to be able to make when you put the side of the lead on the paper. So I'm going to expose some of the lead, and now the lead is going to have this funny shape where it's straight going up and then it will suddenly go in and it will have these sharp corners on it, right? And so I don't really want those corners on the lead. I want it to have this gentle tapering to a point. And I want that tapering to be really, really subtle, not like a really strong curve, but just a very gentle curve coming into the point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some sandpaper, or in my case, a disposable nail file, and I'm going to sand the lead down very gently. I like the nail file because it's a little bit softened, right, underneath it. and I can clean it. I can like run it under the tap and like wash it and reuse it. But you can just use sandpaper, it's totally fine. And so I'm gonna rub the lead against the sandpaper, and again, I'm gonna be rotating it as I rub it against the sandpaper so that the whole way around is even and it goes to this tapered point, okay? So now I've got my pencil properly sharpened. Why? Why did I need to do that? What a pain. Why not just use a normal pencil sharpener? Well, with this shape of pencil, I can apply different amounts of the side of the pencil to the paper. I could put down a little bit, like maybe 5 millimeters of it. Because it's got that slight curve to it, I just put it at a certain angle and I'll get like 5 millimeters on the paper. But then I can put down a little bit more by changing the angle and applying a bit more of the side. And so I can get any width of mark that I want to get. If the sides were just like completely straight, right, then I could basically just put the point down or the whole side. But with that little bit of curve, I can put different amounts of the side down. Another crucial aspect to this, for this to work, is that the paper is not just straight on a hard surface. I can't just put one sheet of newsprint paper straight onto a piece of wood and start drawing. I need quite a lot of newsprint paper, lots of sheets underneath, so that it's a little bit softened, right? The surface is a bit softened. I learned all of this stuff the hard way, okay? So I was like, why are my drawings not working? Oh, because I wasn't sharpening the pencil quite right. Why isn't it working? Because I didn't have enough sheets underneath the paper. Even like 5 sheets is not enough. I need to have a nice stack of sheets underneath, I find, so that it's soft enough, and then I can put different amounts of this slightly tapered lead down on the paper, all right? The next thing is, if the paper is flat on the desk, I'm gonna be kind of doing this, right? If the paper's flat in front of me, I've got to get over the corner of the desk. So I'm gonna be doing this, trying to do my drawing, right? I wanna just have an open posture and be able to move my arm like this freely and make the marks that I wanna make, not have to hunch over the paper. So I need the paper to be angled up. By the way, this is also good because if your paper's flat on the desk, you're looking at it from a weird angle, your proportions are gonna be all funny. So you want it to be angled up anyway, right? If it's like really vertical, like on an easel, that's great. But I could get my arm tired. Sometimes I sit and draw for like 3 straight hours and my arm could get tired from holding it up to this vertical surface in front of me. So I like to have a desk easel and I can sit there real lazy, right? And I have it at like 45 degrees or so. And then my arm can just like hang there and I can move it about and it never gets tired. So this is ideal for me. You can get any kind of desk easel. So I made this one by kind of putting a few, like getting one type of desk easel and chopping it up, just because this really suits what I like, which is to have it hanging off the desk a little bit. So it's a little bit lower so that my arm can be even more lazy and really just hang down there. But you can get any kind of desk easel from wherever. You know, it doesn't have to be a special brand or anything. Look how dusty this one is because I don't use it. But yeah, I just put it on like this. It's gonna work great on the desk, okay? The desk easel can cost like £20 or $20 or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything really, really expensive or anything like that. And you could probably just make one at home with a board and lean it against something or whatever. So now let's talk about these. Now, in the UK, we call these rubbers, all right? But you guys in the US always make fun of me for calling these rubbers. So I'll call it an eraser, okay? So I like to use a rubber eraser like this on my drawings for when I really want to remove a lot of charcoal pencil pretty strongly. Like I've put down too much, I've put it in the wrong place, I kind of want to pull it all the way back. I really want to get rid of it. So I'll use something like this because this is pretty strong and it's not really precise or anything, right? It's kind of like it's like a chainsaw or something on your drawing. It's really strong and not very precise. If I want to remove quite strongly some charcoal, but I want to be precise about it, like this shape is a little bit off and I just want to shave off the side of it or something like that, then I use this rubber, and I quite like this rubber right here. And if I just want to pull things back in a slightly gentler way, then I'll use the kneaded eraser. And so most of the time I'm using this because I don't really need to get super harsh in pulling, because you know, in a sketch, sometimes having the wrong lines there but still visible, it just adds to the sketchy feel. But sometimes I feel like it's just a mess. I want to get rid of things and I'll use the erasers. So, all right. A lot of people say when you're doing these quicker gestural sketches, then don't use a rubber, right? You don't need to correct anything. Just go, go, go. Keep making marks. I don't really feel that way. I feel like if you're kind of trying to perfect everything and get everything just right and having, you know, and then you're erasing and erasing because you just keep trying to make it more and more perfect, then that's not a good use of your time, right? For a quicker figure sketch. But I kind of think of these almost just like drawing tools. Like I can put down a shape and then I can cut into it and sculpt out of it with these tools. And sometimes I've put down a mark and it's a boring mark, like it's made the figure too stiff, or it's too much detail and I want to simplify. So if I'm trying to simplify, or if I'm trying to make it more dynamic, then I should erase the boring, complicated stuff, pull it back. Very often I find that when I'm drawing, I want to start with really light marks to put down like my ribcage egg and my pelvis pants and things like that, which if you don't know what those are, check out our other videos. But I want to put down some initial lumps of clay to sculpt the rest of the drawing from, but I want to put them down really lightly. And if as I go, they've gotten too hard and too strong, I get the kneaded eraser and pull them back, right? Or sometimes I've made my edges too strong, and so I need to pull them back. So here I'm starting with my ribcage egg, and I'm starting to build up the pelvis pants behind it, because in this pose, the torso is a little bit foreshortened, and so I need to place the pelvis pants behind. And then I'm starting to build up the form of the thighs and things like that. And you can already see that because this is a quicker sketch, I'm going to stronger marks more quickly, because I'm not gonna have time to do, I think this was only like a minute or 2 minutes or something. I'm not gonna have time to do like 10 layers of drawing. I've got to get to the final ideas relatively quickly. So I put down the egg shape a bit lighter. If I've got surface lines and things, or lines where I'm just trying to figure things out, I'll put them down lighter. But I'm actually going towards my final lines a little bit more aggressively here. And because it's a quicker sketch, I'm not going to put in all the shadow shapes and things like that. I'm just mapping out the forms and that's it. But one thing you'll notice is that yes, it's a quicker sketch, but I'm not rushing. I'm not putting down the marks as fast as I can. Oh my God, I don't have much time. I'm going slow. Each mark is pretty considered. I'm looking. You can see that very often I'll stop, right? And I'm looking at the figure and thinking about where my mark's gonna go. The strategy that I have for the shortened time is to draw less information, right? I leave out more details, right? I'm not gonna draw the fingers and each facial feature and every tiny little bump and stuff like that, okay? But so for this particular sketch, not much variation in the type of marks that I use, but we'll have more variation in the next one. Once again, I start with my ribcage, egg, and pelvis pants, you know? I'm not just telling you guys to do that, this is what I do in most of my drawings. And I'm starting to map out the pose, but you notice that I used really light marks for the ribcage egg first. It took me a long time to be able to make light marks, but with this setup, with the smooth newsprint and the charcoal pencil, you can let that pencil just skim the surface of the paper and the paper's gonna pick it up, right? And if it's all like basically blank and there's a little mark on there, it's gonna be really, really visible, okay? So right now you can see that some of these marks I'm going much lighter than other marks. So on one side of that thigh, on the right hand side, it's a really light outline mark, and on the other side it's a little bit stronger. Quite often on the lit side of the figure I might go lighter with the mark, and on the darker side I might go a little bit heavier. Where I see that the figure, there's a lot of dark, there's a strong contrast or something like that, or where I'm trying to bring some attention, I'm going to go with stronger marks. And where I want there to be less attention, I'm going to go with lighter marks. Now I'm putting in some of that shadow, and so the edge of the shadow is going to often be softer and wider when it's a form shadow. So when the form is turning away from the light and then the shadow starts to appear as the form turns away from the light, I might have a softer, wider mark there. You see under the breast, there's cast shadows. So that's a form blocking the light and casting a shadow onto another part of the figure. And on the cast shadow, I used sharper lines for the outline of those. So often in the outline and in the cast shadow, I'm going to use sharper marks, and then in the form shadow and core shadow, we'll use wider, softer marks. And if you really want to look, like the way that I learned about this was from Lane Brown, and he taught a really good class in our study group on edges and how to vary those edges. So you can check that out with the link below to our study group. So it's a quick sketch, but I was able to map out the pose with some shadow shapes on there. And here I'm reaching for a cup of tea. I was going to say I was reaching because every now and then the pencil goes out of shape. So I need to grab my sandpaper and refine the edge. But even more important than that is to reach for your cup of tea when you need it, okay? Sometimes I'll pull back the lines, like the underlying, rib cage egg shape, if I feel like it's taking away from the sketch, and then I'm done and it's time to move on. So here are some of the other sketches I did after that one. So let's look at this one. You can see here's the cast shadow where the torso is blocking the light and it's casting a shadow across the thigh. So then got a sharper line, whereas up here is a form shadow, or a core shadow in this case, where the figure is turning, the form of the figure is turning away from the light, and so because it's turned away from the light, a shadow starts to appear, and that means it's a form shadow. And so I'm going to use a softer edge here, and the way that I'm doing this is I'm actually drawing this line going down that shadow. I'm defining the edge with a line, but with that charcoal pencil I can vary that edge, make it really wide and soft in some places and a little bit sharper in other places. And I can actually continue this line all the way across here with one movement of my arm. And I'm looking at the form and I'm seeing how the shadow wraps around the forms, and I'm allowing my arm to follow that and create that line, rather than sort of seeing the shadow and trying to fill the shadow, and then by filling a shadow, I sort of create the shadow shape that way. First, I'll define the edge of the shadow with this line, and then I can start to fill the shadow shape, in this case with a quite even tone, even amount of value, because I don't want to distract the viewer with lots of irrelevant details in here. I want to kind of attract them to the big overall shape. So I leave it pretty even, and to do that I can apply the side of my pencil, and I can even use my finger then to smudge and make it more even that way. So I use my finger quite a bit to smudge the charcoal and smooth it out and make it more even when I don't want a lot of detail and information. So same kind of thing inside of here. So let's take a look at this sketch that I did. It was like a big stretch side with a strong squash side. Lots of stuff going on. The model's very muscular and stuff like that. If I get too caught up in all the muscles and everything, what's the picture going to be about? Is it going to be an anatomy diagram? I wanted it to be more about the big squash and stretch, but I wanted to kind of indicate that there's muscles there without it being a ton of details about the muscles. So I brought out some of the muscles and I brought out some of the edges of the muscle shapes, But in reality, in the thing, there was loads of definition in the muscles, and I tried to leave a lot of that out. You see, it's kind of blank inside of here, but still it's implied, right, with that little bit of information down here. And so the way I kind of tried to think about it was, okay, I'm going to have some more information here. I'm going to have a more empty area, like it's a bit active up here, then it's passive, and then I can have an active area and then make it more gentle, more relaxed, more passive again. If it's all active, if it's all really busy, then it's not going to be as appealing. So as I'm making my marks, I'm trying to think about the design, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to soften up and simplify some of the lines in here. So it goes, and I'm going to allow more complexity and stronger marks up here. Figuring out which pencil I like, where to get the newsprint that works for me, how to sharpen it well, each thing took lots of trial and error, right? If you're in a different place, you need to try different newsprints or marker paper or something like that, different pencils. And the sharpening itself, it requires quite a bit of muscle memory. It's a skill in itself, and it takes time to learn. If you keep snapping I used to come out from where I was drawing and just snapped another pencil. You know, each one costs like £2 or something. So my wife would be like, oh my God, he snapped another pencil. He's going to be grumpy all day now. So, you know, it takes time to figure each of these things out. And so don't worry if you're struggling with it, because that's part of the learning process as well, like all this setup, practical stuff. And then when it comes to, okay, we're going to vary these edges and we're going to put this type of mark here, and how to make these nice marks and how to get that muscle memory. Again, it's going to take a lot of practice, a lot of repetitions. And you've got to be patient with yourself and give yourself that time, because practice basically fixes most of these problems. But one thing is that all the line quality and edge design stuff is probably going to be a real struggle until you figured out how to simplify the figure down. If you're still trying to draw too much detail and information, it's going to be really rough. So that's why I recommend checking out either start with our Fresh Eyes mini course, which will get you simplifying the figure in a really easy, straightforward way. And then if you really want to get serious about your figure drawing skills, check out our Foundations course, which is going to go even further with this simplification skill and really get you that skill. And then it's going to be easier to build your edges and stuff like that on top. If you're really interested in Lane's way of designing his edges, he did a brilliant workshop for us in our study group. We also have my own exercises about edge design, slowly building up that skill of varying your edges. And now we're able to offer a new workshop from Charlie Pickard, who has a completely different type and approach to this. The principles are still the same, the value simplification, the edge variation, but the way that he applies the charcoal is different, the paper that he uses is different, and the way that he adjusts and changes his edges is different. His is a little softer. He's able to render more and turn the forms in a more gentle way. It's a longer type of drawing, and it brings out more information while still keeping a beautiful design. So there's the sort of quicker gestural type of drawings that I do. There's the really beautiful shape design and edge design that Lane does, and he's really focused on that. And then there's the more developed, longer, more gentle turning of the form that Charlie Pickard creates through a longer drawing process. And the principles underneath these, the understanding of the forms, the simplifying of the values, the light and dark, it's the same. But then you can choose what you want to do, and all of that you can learn in our study group now, which is great. But whichever style you want to go for, you're gonna really need to be able to simplify the forms of the figure and simplify the values of the figure. So I've put a tutorial for each of those on the screen. Check them out, and I'll see you over there.